Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final episode of season 2 of your Best Therapist podcast. And I just want to be clear, it's season finale, not series finale. I think I accidentally said that on one of my podcasts, and I didn't mean to. I had someone be like, wait, what? And I was like, no, I'm so sorry. So I am ending season 2. This is the final episode for season 2. And, I have a lot of mixed emotions about it. Today's episode, though, is going to be for a couple reasons. Number one, the episode that just posted in addition to this episode is Baby Reindeer. And I know that Baby Reindeer is really intense and it has really significant themes, lots of trigger warnings. And so I understand that Baby Reindeer isn't going to be for everybody. Number one. Number two, I felt like I just had a couple more things that I wanted to say, to put out there. I definitely wanted to use today's podcast to just thank you all. I couldn't do any of this without you. I mean, the community of you all, of people who have, gathered around me, and I can't emphasize enough how I continue to feel gobsmacked that this is happening, but I'm just so grateful for you all. I'm so grateful for the community. I do want to say a couple things. Is that number one, this podcast is under a year old. So I started this in August of 2023. And when I come back for season 3, which is going to be in August, it will be my 1-year podcast anniversary. And so to look at how far this has come since not even a year ago, I swear to you, I am gobsmacked all the time. I'm honored. I'm confused. I'm happy. I'm thrilled. It's just been such a wild ride. So what I'm going to do today is just share a little bit about why I take my breaks. I know people are super understanding, but I do have a lot of newer listeners as well. But to those of you who have been with me since day one, thank you. I literally know who you are. I will never forget that. And I'm just so honored. And number two, so for the new listeners, I wanted to, just explain a little bit why I do seasons. The other thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to share. So for those of you who when I'm on my break, want to listen to extra episodes, I'm going to tell you where you can get those. And also, I'm going to share a list of my podcast eps, season 1 and season 2, because there's 40 and they're pretty good. I mean, sometimes I don't re-listen to myself because that just gives me anxiety, but I'm sure the first couple of episodes are oh my God, I probably sound like an infant, like a squeaky little voice. But either way, listen, I'm growing. I'm coming into my own. I'm like a caterpillar going into a cocoon and coming out a butterfly. I have no idea where I am in the process. Some days I have no idea. But truly, I am so honored that I get to do this. And, I had to leave my private practice in 2020 due to my chronic health issues. So for those of you who don't know, in 2015, so I'm a cancer survivor. When I was 17, I had ovarian cancer. So this was in 1998. And I got to meet the cast of Friends. There is a podcast episode about that. I got to, make a wish through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and it was super amazing. But then in 2015, I was diagnosed with another cancer called chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And at the time of that diagnosis, the medication that I'm on now didn't even exist. At the time of that diagnosis, I was just waiting, not so patiently. I was sick and getting sicker, and I just had to wait for some good treatment options. I've already had chemotherapy with the first cancer treatment, and my medical team all said that chemotherapy, again, it would just, unless I really needed it, it would decrease the quality of my life. So, we all agree that that was not a good idea. And again, this is no judgment for people there. I know lots of people in the cancer community who have had to have chemotherapy multiple times, rounds, different times in their life. So this is not a judgment. This is just what my team said for me. They thought it would be more harmful than good. So during the pandemic, so I waited for treatments to be available. And then they were, and then I had to go on treatment during the pandemic, which was the most scary, horrifying experience of my life. I already was struggling with complex PTSD, but that took it to a different stratosphere. I experienced a severe clinical depression that became more deadly than my cancer. It was just so horrible, but I had to step away from practice for multiple reasons. Number one, with the pandemic and with my immune system and being on immunotherapy treatment, my doctors were like, you cannot leave the house. Literally. For the first year, they were like, we're not joking. People that we're seeing with CLL catch this are not surviving, and you need to stay in your house. That was the message I received. And so I did. And it was horrible. And I felt awful not being able to go back to my practice. I was treating people that I had treated for a while or who had followed me from other places. I had real relationships with them. If any of them are listening to this, I'm always sorry about that. I don't know that I'll ever not feel guilt about that. But obviously I had to put me first, which I'm not always comfortable or familiar with. And so this podcast break is me putting me first, even though it isn't comfortable. I know that I have to do it. And the thing about me is I do believe what I'm doing now. I feel that, people ask me, well, would you go back to private practice? And, first of all, my health right now is just too inconsistent because, when you see someone for therapy, I take it so seriously. It's so sacred. It's so important. I can't have days where it's like, well, I don't know if I can, maybe, that's just not how therapy works. You have to be able to consistently be present, for people. And I'm just not in the physical space, unfortunately, to be able to do that. I thought when I was, diagnosed with CLL and when I started treatment that, I would go on treatment and I would get to a point where I'd be able to get off of it. But my path has, of course, been more challenging than that. I'm a little bit of a medical unicorn, and so I have a good team of people at Penn Medicine. And so the point of what I'm saying is that this podcast, for me, is an opportunity to help people on a level of not just helping one person at a time, of helping a bunch of people at a time. And so for me, my healing and my recovery, this is such a blessing because I'm able to share my experience, strength, and hope, but also share psychoeducation on clinical concepts that I do believe are really helping people. I get messages all the time, and every time I receive them, I'm like, do they know they're sending this to me? But I just feel that I'm so honored to be doing the work that I'm doing now. And the side note is that I love it. It's, it's stressful and all these things, but like when I first started this over a year ago, what I will say is I released an episode. It was like my third or fourth episode that I released. I talked about particular celebrities and the episode blew up and I got like 5,000 views on YouTube and I got relentlessly trolled to the point that people tried to tank my podcast rating. There is still one person from that time hanging on that they repost the same bad review every single month. It's actually kind of funny. I mean, it's terrible because it's like I would encourage that person, do something better with your time. I understand people aren't going to like me. And if people really dislike me, that's fine. I get it. But don't over focus on me. Do something more effective with your time. I don't even, I know this sounds weird, but it's like I want to help them too. It's like whatever it is about me you don't like, just move along. Like that's a lot of energy for you, but I digress. And so my point is that when I started, I really felt after that wave of trolling and hate, I was like, I don't think I can do this. I was like, I'm a very sensitive person. I did not have like a community. I did not have, people who I knew were supporting me. The first people to support me, by the way, were Drama Darlings. And for people who don't have any idea what I'm talking about, I got my start through Amy Phillips, who has a podcast on Patreon called Drama Darling. And all of those listeners really were like the wind beneath my wings. I'm not joking, because it gave me enough. So thank you to the Drama Darlings who are listening to this, who support, myself and Amy. But I really felt like, I don't know if this is going to be for me. I'm too sensitive. I'm a regular gal. I'm not made for this world. But, the thing about me, for better or for worse, is I am fiercely resilient. I am incredibly tenacious. I persevere through pretty much anything and everything. I mean, I can say that. Like, I'm a pretty badass lady. So I just did what I do, and I put my head down, and I thought, Melissa, you got to give this a year. You got to give it a year, because if you pull the ripcord now, you're never going to know. You're going to regret it. You're not going to know what this could have been. So I made a pact with myself. I made a pact that I was going to give this a year. And after that year, if I did not feel that this was a healthy thing for me to do, I wouldn't do it. And I would chalk it up to saying, okay, I tried it. Outside of my career as a therapist, I literally had no idea what I would ever want to do. No joke. That's the only thing I ever wanted to do and felt like I was really good at. And then this came around. And so for me to get a second chance at a meaningful career, I just can't emphasize enough how special and important that is to me. And the good news is, I know people are like, well, what's the end of that story? So I'm not going anywhere. I am going to come back in August for season 3. I am going to hopefully do tons of seasons. I love this. I love what I'm doing. I feel confident in this space now in a way that I didn't before. It was wild for me, because I was talking to my therapist about this, is that when I was doing therapy, everyone at first, when you're doing therapy, everyone has imposter syndrome. You're like, who am I? I don't know what I'm doing. But once I got to a certain point in my career, I felt so confident clinically that anything that was thrown at me, I could reasonably deal with. And to be able to feel that about a career that you're really passionate about was so cool. And trust me, I mean, I still made mistakes and I still made missteps. I was always learning. But I just knew that no matter what came my way, I had the skills and the competence and the knowledge and understanding to be able to effectively address it. And I was one of those people. I had, I rarely had no shows. I rarely had people not return. I was able to, the thing about me that I'm really good at is building relationships. And so I didn't understand how doing that clinically would also translate to this space. I'm great at building relationships. There's people that I talk to on Instagram every day, that I've talked to every day for like a year. I have a lot of people that I communicate with on YouTube and, all these other things. And so I just want you all to know, and by the way, this is off the cuff. I don't have notes here. This is just me speaking to you all from my heart. And so my plan for this podcast is to the moon. I am growing every day. I'm growing in listenership, on my social media, which I still hate social media. I will still never love it. And if I'm being honest, part of what I'm doing too to grow is so that I can have other options besides social media and specifically Instagram. I feel extremely nervous about the way that Meta is going. And for me to have my most significant source of, I don't know, media or whatever be on Instagram, it makes me very nervous. People get blocked or shadow banned or whatever. You do one wrong thing, you say one wrong thing. And now with AI, they're doing all of these wild things where people are DMing me. Like I tried to comment something nice and Instagram told me that it was like not okay because like Instagram gives you this message for, I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about, but for those who don't, someone will try to say, love this episode, blah, blah, blah. And then Instagram will come back and say that comment was removed. It seems like you're trying to get likes, comments, or whatever. And it's like, well, what else are we doing here? Like, no one's on social media just like going on a nature walk. Social media is a disaster. Everyone's on there for a purpose. And if not to get likes and comments and engagement, what is the point? So for people listening to this, please know that that's not me, that's Meta. And this is the problem with AI. It's the first iteration and it sucks. It's not doing a good job on Instagram. And so it makes me nervous that is where, I almost have 13,000 followers on Instagram. So, and I can't see, like, I'm not a great real person, so I don't have a ton of followers on TikTok. I won't do Twitter or X or whatever. I just won't do that. I just don't. Elon Musk, I don't know what's happening with that. And I think it's like a swamp over there and I'm just not doing it. So, I digress. But coming back to why I'm taking this break. Because again, I do think it's for me, I mention my health a lot just because this is my life, right? Chronic illness is my life. Chronic cancer is a part of my life. And so I reference it a lot. And so I thought it was only fair to give people kind of a little bit of an update as to, again, what's behind this break. So there's two reasons here. Number one, as I mentioned, so with a chronic cancer, I started treatment during the pandemic. However, I am still on that treatment 4 years later. And, the thing with a chronic cancer is that it's incurable. And the best you can hope for is to either keep it stable with medication or to get to a point where it's called minimal residual disease, MRD. There's no typical remission for this cancer like there was for my other cancer, which was ovarian cancer. I've been in remission from that for 25 years. I had 3 hysterectomies. Ugh, don't get me started on that. Literally 3. 2 partial. Well, they were all partials. Partial to equal 1 whole one. And so, my belly looks like I've been attacked by a cougar. Literally, it's so wild. But honestly, I wear my scars like a badge of courage because to me, my scars show where the structure of my character has been welded. And I have no shame about that. So what started happening is that immunotherapy is a more targeted therapy, but let's not get it twisted. Chemotherapy and immunotherapy, it's both toxic waste. My medication, it comes in like a biohazard bag. You have to dispose of it a certain way. My husband can't touch it with his bare hands. And if he does, we have to call poison control. Like, it's not just like, it's pretty similar to chemotherapy, but whatever, it's more targeted. And so what started happening, and this is where my masking comes in. I'm just so good at this. Last year I was having all these issues, cardiac issues. And so what happens is sometimes after you're on immunotherapy for a period of time, it starts to impact your cardiac system for some people. And of course, I was one of those people. And so last year, and by the way, like most people who listen to this have no idea, there were times where I was recording, with a heart monitor. And there were times that I was recording, waiting for results to see if I had another cancer. And, the medical stuff that I deal with on a day-to-day basis would really scare people. And so I'm not always I'm open enough to help people understand the situation, but not so much because it would scare people. Like a week in my life would freak people out, medically, truly. So I had to wear this heart monitor for 2 weeks, and it was like attached to my chest. And so like my skin, it felt like fire ants. It was just like so gross. And anyone who's done this, it's called a Zeo patch. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So when I took it off after 2 weeks, I had this like crazy rash. It was so painful. It was so horrible, but I did it because I had to do it. And what it showed is that the immunotherapy was attacking my cardiac system. I was having supraventricular beats that I was not supposed to be having. And because I'm so attentive to my body, I knew it. And I was able to get that test done. And so then my medical team, we had to pivot. And so the pivot was, well, right now there's nothing better for you to be on, but you can't be on a whole dose because if we fry your heart, you can't survive that. So since that time, I've been on a half a dose, and the half a dose was doing great. And my numbers were going down, down, down. And then they just stopped. And they've plateaued, and it's been about 9 months that they've plateaued. And so it's only a matter of time before. So the point is I need to take the time on this break to circle back to this issue. I have to go to Philly. I have to see my oncology team, and we have to come up with a plan in terms of, do we do another medication? Do we try a full dose of another medication? Can my heart handle that? Or do we do a half? It really is. The thing with CLL is it's so complex. It's so complex. If you look it up on the internet, it'll say, well, it's an elderly cancer. Most people get it when they're old and don't even require treatment. Well, the thing about that is that there's that's accurate for some people, but for people like me, I was diagnosed when I was 35. So if you get an incurable cancer when you're 70 or 80, well, who cares? You can live 10 years, not treat it, and then you die of something else. But when you're 35, that's not our course of treatment. So the young people like me, there are a whole group of young people, a whole community of people with CLL who are young, and we are trying to live, more than 10 years. And when I was diagnosed with this, by the way, in 2015, that was the stat, because there really weren't good medications for it. It was like, you had 10 years, and I'm at my 10-year mark now. And so I'm just grateful. Modern medicine has saved my life twice. First time with ovarian cancer, and for sure now with CLL, because if it weren't for modern medicine, I would for sure not be here. Which is wild. I talked about in that episode, the butterfly effect. The baby reindeer episode, I talk about the butterfly effect and how, I think to myself that there easily would have been a world where I'm not speaking to you. And that's never lost on me. I just feel that any extra time that I get is a blessing. And my trauma recovery has been so meaningful for me that like part of my healing and recovery is sharing all of this with you, because if anything I can say can help anybody, well, then I am doing my job. Because what the hell is the point of all this pain and suffering if I can't do something with it? I have to give my pain purpose. And so that is what this podcast is all about. And, so the good thing that the podcast has done for me is it's been a beautiful distraction, because, with my health issues, I get to focus on this instead. And, I need that because I can't always focus on my health issues. Like for people listening with chronic illness, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like we have to be attentive, but not over focused. And it's a very hard line to walk. And some days I do great, and some days I fail miserably. But, the fact is that I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for all the time that I get. And I do need to circle back to, the CLL stuff. I'm not thrilled about it. Candidly, I have a lot of anxiety about it. But, I know that whatever happens, I got my back. I got my back. I know how to manage the stuff. So I don't want people to worry or stress because I got this. And if things are going on that you need to know about, I'll let you know. But other than that, it's just too much to always talk about. It's stressful. It's hard, so that's that. So I am going to be, when I'm on my break, figuring out some sort of, I have to get some tests done, that I've, I'm ashamed to admit I've put off a little bit. And so I got to get some blood work. I got to get some testing done. And then I'm going to reconvene with my treatment team and we're going to figure out another plan. And eventually at some point, that plan might include a bone marrow transplant or a stem cell I understand that with this type of cancer, there's a lot of things that I may need to do, to stay well. And I don't know what that is now. You just have to take things day by day, literally one day at a time. And so for me, those concepts that I talk about, from the program of AA, I'm not in that program. I've been to Al-Anon meetings and I've grown up with addiction in my family, but I do find some of those concepts for me with chronic illness also really applicable, the one day at a time. And if I focus on what my life is going to look like for the rest of my life, that would probably terrify me. But for today, I'm okay. For today, I'm okay. And for tomorrow, I have a plan. And so I will keep you posted as appropriate. And, because also for me too, I do want to be open, but I do also need to maintain some privacy and, just for myself. I don't want to be too much of a share, again, that's a fine line too. So thank you for your care and concern about that. I am very confident I'm going to be okay. I trust my treatment team very much. They're wonderful people. In fact, my oncologist right now is literally on sabbatical doing work to figure out a cure for CLL. No joke. He's really doing that right now. And I just feel so proud of him and so proud to be, a patient of his, because how honorable is that, right? But, we're needing to see him while he's on sabbatical and, him being it's time for us to talk about this, that it's oh gosh, Oz is taking a break from Ozzing and now he's focusing on me and I'm so scared, but it'll be okay. So enough about that. The other piece of my break is that I am going on a wonderful vacation next week. I am very excited. I am going to Chicago to see my family. So for those of you who don't know, I was born and raised in a suburb of Chicago, Downers Grove. Shout out to all my DG people. I still have lots of friends there that I grew up with, lots of family. I have a big family that lives there. So I'm going to take my break. I'm going to go see them. I'm going to soak in all the love and support and family time and friend time. And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to deal with my stuff. So I'm very much looking forward to that break and that vacation. I was thinking about doing a listener meetup, but at this time I decided not to because I just don't have the energy. I'm just so exhausted. I'm mentally, physically exhausted, and I just really need a break. So I'm hopeful that people are understanding of that. Now, that doesn't mean I'll never do a listener meetup. That's literally my goal. So let me pivot into talking about the future of Your Bish Therapist podcast. Number one, I'm going to come back in August with season 3, and I'm very excited about that. I have some irons in the fire in terms of some guests that I want to have, some, things that I want to do. And I'm just really excited about that. But the thing that I want everybody to know, and I've talked about this a couple different times, is that while I'm on my break, July 11th starts Real Housewives of Orange County season premiere. And I am absolutely going to be watching it, and I am absolutely going to be covering it. So this is what my plan is for right now. When I'm on my break from this season, I do have a Spreaker Supporters Club, which is basically like a Patreon. It's on Spreaker.com. I've explained a couple times, but it's a way for people to support me. It's $5 a month. And so my commitment is that when I'm on my break, I'm going to be doing episodes of covering Real Housewives of Orange County only for those supporters. Now, for people who are upset about that, whatever, there are tons of ways for people to support me. And if it doesn't make sense financially, that's okay. What I'm saying is that all of those episodes that are for Spreaker supporters, eventually, when I come back for season 3, I will release them all publicly. So people will get to hear them. You're just going to hear them late for free, or you can go over to Spreaker.com, search for Your Bish Therapist, and follow me there. And that is how you can find the episodes. So when I post the episodes, they will be only for supporters. They will be locked. And the only way for you to find them is to go to Spreaker.com, either via the app or the website. This break that I'm taking right now is also for me to test that out, because people were having trouble finding it. They weren't listening to the episode. So I did release an episode as kind of like a test. It didn't get a lot of people. Like, I know how many people are supporters, and it didn't get a lot of listens. And so I want to be mindful about what I'm doing, if it's good for everybody or not, because I can just go to Patreon, right? Like, I do want to build a community. The one thing that I like about Patreon is, there's chats, there's, community pages. I can do a lot of different things. But the Spreaker Supporters Club, I think people just aren't using it as it needs to be used. So there is someone on there, which I'm not going to say their name, but you know who you are, thank you, who has commented, there are ways to talk to me through the Spreaker Supporters Club. You can leave comments, we can chat, we can interact. So if you are interested in hearing me talk about OC during my breaks, go over to Spreaker, join, support. And if I end up during my break, I am going to assess, are people really listening to these episodes or are they not? Because if they're not, then I'm going to have to reassess, because it's a lot of work to do, if people aren't going to listen. And also, like, if people aren't, it's not that they don't want to listen. If it's complex, that's what I'm saying. If it's complex, if it's hard to find, because trust me, I know it is a little challenging to find. I participated in the Spreaker Supporters Club. There was like a webinar, and I did participate in that. And so what it is essentially a beta program that Spreaker's using, where the content creators get 100% of the money, which is extremely rare. Like, you never see that. Apple Premium takes 40%. Patreon takes, a percentage too. And so I was like, well, I think everybody wants the money to go to me, and I want the money to go to me. So let's try this. But if it doesn't work for us all, then I'm going to have to move to Patreon, because for me, growth is the goal. It's, I want a community. I want to chat with you all. I want to know what you want covered. This isn't just me talking to myself like into a void. You're all a part of this, and a very important one. So that Spreaker Supporters Club, but also your girl just got, I don't know what you call it, but on YouTube, I am now available for the partnership program, eligible, I guess I should say. So on my YouTube, I'm also going to be offering, I guess, memberships or subscriptions. I still have to explore that. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like. But so what I'm going to do is the content that I do for the Spreaker Supporters Club, I'm also going to post that for members on YouTube. So there are 2 different ways to support. You can go over to YouTube. I'm still setting that up, so it's not available right this second. That's what I'm going to be doing on my break. I'm also going to be upgrading my audio equipment, because I had that one scare with, like, my headphones have been weird, and this is not, I got this to start because it was like cheap, and it was like, well, I don't even know if I'm going to be doing this. So, whatever. So I'm going to be upgrading my audio equipment. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is I use a recording. I don't know what you call it. It's called Riverside, and they now have ability to do live stream. So I also I'm just saying there's lots of things for me in the works between, maybe going live on YouTube or live streaming on Riverside, and I can have guests. I can have questions, like people, kind of like a call-in, but like a more modern version of it. So my brain, while I'm doing all this other stuff, is going to be focusing on how to build, how to grow, how to make things more accessible for you all. And so I'm just really excited to share that with you all. I got plans. I want to be booked and busy, honey. And I want to get some really good guests on the show. And I have some irons in the fire with that. The coolest thing about all of this has been when I get my statistics about how many listens I get, I also get what's called a geolocation, and I get to see all of the places where people are listening to me. And I promise you, I almost died. I was like, what? People are listening to me all over the world, and I'm just like so freaking honored. And so I want to give a shout out to all, all the countries and all the places. And also I just thought maybe you guys would like a peek behind the curtain into, I don't know, some of the statistics of this, but obviously, so most of my listeners are in the United States. Probably about like 85% of my listeners are in the US. Next is Canada. You, my Canadian friends. Hello. Happy to have you. Then Australia. Love Australia. Love it so much. Would love to visit, but the creepy crawlies absolutely terrify me. But here in the States, we're having this invasion of these like flying spiders. And I'm like, well, I might as well go to Australia then, because that's basically what they have. So maybe, one day, maybe I'll do a live show there. Who the heck knows? The sky is the limit. Then is the United Kingdom. Thank you. Yes. Which I'll be really interested to hear some people from the UK talk what they think about, baby reindeer and things like that. So then there's Norway, Ireland, Sweden, Germany, France, Italy, New Zealand, Puerto Rico, Spain, Denmark, Mexico, India, South Korea. Hi. Like there's a couple of you in South Korea. There's like a small party of you, but Hungary. And I talked to one of the people that I talked to on social media is from Hungary. Israel, sending all the people living in Israel, all my love and support. And if I didn't get a breakdown here, so there's an other as well. So I don't know if people are also listening to me in other places, but just sending you so much love and support. The Netherlands, Austria, South Africa, Brazil, Bahamas, and Japan. And I swear to you, I just am blown away by the fact that I'm sitting here talking to my microphone, and there is someone right now in one of these places that's just like listening to me, and I just feel so freaking honored. So thank you. Okay, now let me get to the listening guide. Okay, my first episode of season 1, I'm going to do season 1 first. It's called The Maiden Voyage of YBT Podcast, and that one, my voice is like so squeaky. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so scared. I don't know what I'm doing. So episode 2 is a supersized episode called Wow, Bethany, Wow. Please don't let it be about HIPAA. It's about HIPAA. And this was related to the whole, when Bethany had Rachel Leviss on her podcast, and they talked about HIPAA. And at first it was like when all of this broke, it's like old news now, but so I did cover that. And then episode 3 was Aftershocks of the Aftermath, which is Bethany posted like a podcast called The Aftermath or something. And so that was like my snarky, play on words about that. So I talk about the aftermath of the podcast. I talk about Bethany. I talk about, what I thought about her and this reality reckoning and Rachel Leviss and all this stuff. Okay. Episode 4 is the one where your Bish therapist tells her story. And that is where I talk about my Friends episode. And for people who are Friends junkies, I named it the one where, because that's what every single Friends episode is named, the one where ... the one where, whatever. And so here I tell my story of, cancer survival, but mostly, what it was like to Make-A-Wish through Make-A-Wish Foundation. I met the cast of Friends. I met the cast of ER. I met the cast of West Wing. I was out in LA. It was a wild experience. And so that was me telling my story. And that was also, where I met Matthew Perry. So when he passed, it was truly devastating for me. And I do have an episode about that, but I forget where it is, and I'll share that. So the 5th episode is the Jeff Lewis, Heather McDonald, Justin Martindale drama triangle. Then 6 was Bravo News Roundup. That one, it was just like, I think it was the first I was covering Real Housewives of Orange County last year. And there were a couple like major things going on in the news. So that was what that was. And then I did a bonus episode called Addiction Among Housewives. It was after Shannon Beador got her DUI. And because I have such a history and understanding of addictions personally and professionally, I do tend to focus on, cover addiction a lot. And furthermore, I'm extremely excited to cover OC, because apparently Shannon Beador really didn't take her, I don't know if she didn't take her DUI seriously, but her drinking behavior continues. We get to see some of that on camera, and I will be here to mention it all. So episode 7, this is truly for me one of my top 10 episodes, The Murdaugh Murders, A Legacy of Generational Wealth and Trauma. I put so much work into that episode, and I also, I say this all the time, but for those of you who have listened, I'm a true crime junkie. And so for me, this is one of my favorite episodes that I've done. Number 7, Murdaugh Murders. Then episode 8 was Real Housewives of Orange County and Southern Charm. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait until Southern Charm comes back. I have so much to say. The men of Southern Charm are just clinical gold for me. And I'm here to cover every single bit of it when it comes back. Episode 9 was the Kim and Corey Biermann saga. To be honest, I'm done talking about Kim. I'm so tired of it. I feel like I don't understand why people are still giving her opportunities. She's not well, and she needs to, we can't just keep pretending that she's okay and just give her more shows. I saw recently where she's getting her own show with Cynthia Bailey, and I'm like, why are we enabling this behavior? I just whatever. And so maybe I do need to talk about that again, who knows. Then episode 10 is There's Something About Mary Cosby. This is also one of my top 10 episodes, in addition to the Murdaugh Murders, because I did a lot of work. I watched, I think it was an Up and Adam interview with Mary Cosby's mom and dad. And I did a family tree. I really did a lot of research. I put my heart and soul into that episode. And so if, I still to this day am blown away that Mary Cosby continues to be shoved down our throats because she's a housewife for the new season of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I'm not joking. I don't know if I'll watch, because I'm just I think it's so wild to give, Bravo gives terrible people platforms a lot. But for me, with the aspect of manipulation using religion, I really have no tolerance for that. And so I do try to be neutral, but if you want to hear one episode of me not being super neutral, listen to that one. Then episode 11 for season 1, Southern Charm and Real Housewives of New York reunion. That was the new iteration. Episode 12 was tribute to my friend Matt. So I talked about Matthew Perry and how he was like the first person to see me. I know it sounds like a weird story to tell, but I was devastated to hear of his passing. I still truly haven't been able to watch Friends. I'm not joking. I just, it hurts my heart too much. And so I hope that I'm able to go back to Friends, because it used to be a comfort show for me, but now it's just too hard. But in addition to the tribute to my friend Matt, everybody loves, the episode is also titled Everybody Loves Tom and Narcissists. And I talk about how Tom did a podcast with Dr. Drew, and he took like Dr. Drew's narcissism test and he scored like a very low score. And I immediately was like, no, this isn't right. And I showed on that podcast how easy it was to skew the results. And so I just talk a little bit about like the psychometrics of like testing and how it's, in my opinion, not accurate at all. And then that episode, geez, this must have been a long one. I also talked about the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills premiere. Episode 13, season 1 is Listen Linda. That is my episode. Again, this is also probably one of my top 10. I did an episode about Monica Garcia and her mother, Linda. So I talk a lot about narcissistic abuse. I talk about some really significant clinical concepts. So that was a huge episode. If you haven't listened to that, I encourage you. Episode 14, oh my gosh, this episode was called Be the Light. And this episode was about me finding a person walking on the side of the road in wintertime, improperly dressed in the middle of a mental health crisis, and me having to call 911. But also when police came, this person ran off and I had to literally like basically act as like a, I don't know, negotiator. I just acted as a mental health professional. I wasn't working at the time. It wasn't professional. It was just me being a human being trying to get this other human being some help. And for me, I'm not joking. So the stretch of road that I found him walking on to this day, almost a year later, I think of this person every single time that I'm on that road. And I did give an update about this, but the person that I helped, and this will only make sense if you listen to the episode, but I did eventually get a call from a psychiatric hospital, and I'm not going to say where, from a social worker who was calling me because I was the one who had to hospitalize this person, because the trooper that I was dealing with didn't want to deal with it. And I had to go. I had to do like a involuntary hospitalization, blah, blah, blah. It was just like such a stressful encounter. But I talk about being the light in the world that you want to see. And truly what stresses me out, I mean, it really is almost like PTSD. When I drive past that spot, I swear what I think to myself is, imagine if I didn't help him. It was winter. He was not properly dressed. There were people driving by, just ignoring. And I think to myself, I know that I saved his life, but that hurts my heart. Like, what if I wasn't there? What if I didn't see him? It just really messed with my head, and it still does. So I just have to be honest about that. But I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad that he's alive. I'm glad that he's getting the help that he deserves. And I just hope he's okay. And then episode 15 was, it's called YBT Announcement. And it was just me announcing that I'm going to take a break, because season 1, I was just like so new and I was so green and I was dealing with a lot physically and emotionally. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know, whatever. So episode 15 is just me announcing that I'm going to do seasons, which obviously I've stuck to that. And then episode 16 is a 2-hour season finale about the Twin Flames universe, cult or spiritual refuge. And I have some very, very significant thoughts about that. So for season 1, if you're going to listen to episodes, I would say listen to the Murdaugh Murders, listen to There's Something About Mary Crosby, listen to Listen Linda, and I mean, the season finale I think was amazing too, but listen, use your best judgment. Okay. Now, season 2, I'm just going to quickly go over the episode guide. So season 1, I had 17 episodes. And season 2, by the time, like, this is the last episode, there's 22 episodes. That's a lot. So, Also, in between, I did a surprise. Like, I did a surprise. I love that. I love that reference to Jill Zarin on Scary Island. Surprise. So I did a little extra surprise in between seasons. So this season, episode 1 was Paris in Love, Generational Wealth and Trauma. And then episode 2 was Paris in Love Part 2. But I also talk about the teenage hell camps that she was sent to. And there was the reason I talk about that is on Netflix. There was a documentary called Teenage Hell Camp, and I watched it and I related that experience to what Paris experienced. I have her book. I have it here. It's always right next to my podcast desk because I think it's great. I support Paris. By the way, I got like a 1-star review because someone was like, she seems like a lame fangirl of Paris. And I'm like, I am a fan of her. And I'm sorry that my joy and enthusiasm upsets you so much. I'm not going to apologize for that. I adore Paris. I think that she literally saved her own life. She survived a lot and she's an amazing person. And so I'm not going to apologize for being excited about that. It's so weird. Episode 3 was Gypsy Rose Blanchard, Munchausen syndrome, malingering, factitious disorder. Oh my, that was a banger. That was a really good episode. So I watched all the Gypsy Rose Blanchard stuff that I could get my hands on. Then I talk about, her mom, Munchausen syndrome by proxy, malingering. I talk about all of that. That was a really good episode. Episode 4 was Announcement and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I think that announcement was the fact that Kyle Richards, and this is what like really got my Instagram account like on fire. I did a clinical interpretation of something and Kyle Richards reposted it and was like, yes, every word of this. And it was like kind of like my initial claim to fame or whatever. But then also that got me into the New York Times. Someone from the New York Times had called to get quotes from me about the Kyle and Mauricio situation because of the whole thing. So it was like a really wild experience. Episode 5 is Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Reunion, and Bravo News Roundup with Ryan Bailey was my guest. Episode 6 is Vanderpump Rules for Therapy with guest Lindsay Lime. So Lindsay Lime, she has a page on Instagram called Vanderpod Recaps, and she recaps, and writes out all of the, in the Vanderpump Rules universe, like all the podcasts. And Sheena talked about doing psychedelic assisted trauma therapy. And so that episode talks a lot about that, talks a lot about some of the half measures that VPR cast members make when it comes to self-improvement. So that was a banger. Episode 7, Summer House and my origin story with Amy Phillips. So because Amy Phillips is where I got my start, we talked a little bit about that. And we also talked about the Beverly Hills reunion. This Summer House. Ugh, sorry. And then episode 8, I talk about going on Rachel Goes Rogue podcast, because if you don't know that, I was a guest on Rachel Goes Rogue, which was the most wild experience. I went on to talk about grooming, and that was a wild experience. So I talk about that in episode 8. I also talk about Summer House and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Reunion Part 3. Then episode 9, Bracing for 2024, How to Stay Sane During This Year's Election Season with Mandy Slutzker. Mandy and I are going to be doing more collaborations, by the way, in season 3. I'm going to be doing more on her show. She's going to be doing more on mine. People seem to really enjoy us together. And for those who don't know, Mandy Slutzker, she has a podcast called Is This Real Life with Mandy Slutzker? I highly recommend it. Go over, check it out. She's also on Instagram. She's a lobbyist in DC, but she's like a wonderful person. She's doing the hard work that people are complaining about, like why, and she's doing the hard work. And so people, I know all of you really adore her, and so do I. I did a bonus episode called Online Therapy Platforms Helping or Harming. And in this episode, I basically talk about BetterHelp being not good. And I outlined some other online therapy programs that are better. But here's what's interesting. After I did that episode on YouTube, I got into some sort of YouTube K-hole where I was like being hidden. And on one of my episodes that I did on YouTube, BetterHelp was like a advertiser, and I was like, I didn't approve this. So at first I was not going to do YouTube anymore, but now I'm part of the partnership program. So I just have to keep an eye on that because I don't want to advertise for BetterHelp. I don't agree with them. I don't support them. There are lots of other ways to get therapy. BetterHelp. If you're hearing this and you're like, why? Well, listen to the episode. I give, you know how I roll. I always give tons of research, and it's not just my opinion. I outline real serious concerns about that, platform. Episode 10 is Happy Birthday, Bish. It was my 43rd birthday. Talked about that. 11 was Real Housewives of Potomac and Monica Garcia on the Vial Files. Episode 12 is Summer House in the Valley. And then I also did a Spreaker Supporters Club episode. It was titled Spreaker Supporters Club High. It's a bonus episode for supporters. So if, go ahead and listen to that if you're a subscriber. Episode 13 is Real Housewives of New Jersey Toxicity and Summer House. I talk about why I'm not covering Jersey, and I've never been so happy with my decision to not cover something, because the Jersey fans are sometimes out of order, and all of the dumb drama. It's just like there's nothing clinically significant for me to even focus on. Like, there's nothing authentic about it, if I'm being honest. So that's that. Episode 14 is called What in the Bravo Hell, where I talk about some of the wild things going on in the Bravoverse. Episode 15. So What in the Bravo Hell, I did have some severe audio issues because, well, actually this is relevant, so I'll say this now. So because of the chemotherapy that I had in the past, the chemotherapy that I had was ototoxic. So it was toxic to my auditory nerves. So I have very significant hearing loss in specifically my right ear. But that is one of the things that I have to circle back on because it seems like my hearing has been way, way worse. And so what happened was when I recorded What in the Bravo Hell, I couldn't tell that one of my headphones was out. And so the audio was like not great. And so here's the thing, it's quiet, but then when the commercials come on, they're like so loud. So episode 15, I explained the audio issues. I explained what happened. I tried to do a million edits. It was like a disaster, but, so I'm going to address my hearing issue, number one, and number two, I'm going to be getting some new equipment. But I also talk about in episode 15 some news for the podcast, and I explain Spreaker Supporters Club. So if you want an in-depth explanation about it, listen to that episode. Episode 16 was VPR Reunion in the Valley, and then episode 17, Summer House VPR in the Valley with Mandy Slutzker. Now, episode 18, the interview with Ann Maddox and Amanda Lifford from We Signed an NDA. Ann Maddox is Tim Sandoval's ex-assistant, and that interview got a lot of views, listens, feedback. It was really, really great. Then after that, Summer House Reunion in the Valley finale, which I always had a lot to say about the Valley. So those episodes are great. And then I just released an episode called Summer House Reunion Part 2 and the story of Lois Rinna surviving the Trailside Killer. So for those of you who don't know, Lisa Rinna's mother was the first victim of serial killer David Carpenter, also known as the Trailside Killer. And I was like, wow, what a way to talk about my two loves of, serial murder and housewives. So that's what that episode was. And then the other episode, in addition to the one you're hearing today, obviously is Baby Reindeer, where I talk a lot about I talk about all of it. So, for today, this was just an extra episode where I wanted to just, again, do some free speaking, talk to you all, thank you all, share my thoughts, share my plans, and just one big thank you, thank you, thank you. So please, again, if you have any questions, let me know on my Instagram, Your Bish Therapist on Instagram. I have a link tree that has the links to my email, to my podcast, to my article in New York Times, anything that I've ever done, it's on my link tree. But I look forward to relaxing, rejuvenating, addressing some issues so that I can come back in season 3 with a bang. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I can't wait. And I don't know. I just can't wait. So thank you all, not only for listening today, for listening for the last 2 seasons, for supporting me, for being a community, for helping, when I felt like I can't do this anymore. You all lifted me up, and I'm just eternally grateful. So that's going to be it for today. This is a wrap on season 2. And I send you all tons of love and support. And I cannot wait to speak to you all again in August. Ta-ta for now.